Good morning, viewers. Welcome back to the Strength Theory podcast. Today, I am here with
Niko Luna.
Alrighty, and today we're going to be talking about Niko's transition journey and how we got to where we are today. So, Niko, if you don't mind, would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am a senior in college, which is daunting. I use all pronouns. I came out as transgender freshman year of college, right from the get-go. And I just had a panel on talking about being transgender in healthcare, so I'm on a roll today.
Look at you. How did that panel go?
I think it went really well. I was ready for weird questions to be asked, but because it was a room full of professionals and they wanted to be there, I was like, oh, this is actually really nice and supportive.
Okay. What kind of questions were you expecting, like the more weird ones?
I was expecting questions about like surgeries or like what made you be transgender, which, you know, at this point I get is like a bunch of uneducated people, so yeah. I'm not as shocked that those weren't allowed in the room.
Sure. Okay. So I feel like a lot of times for the viewers, I am a cisgender woman. I'm straight. Obviously I don't have any firsthand experience. I've ran by a lot of the questions by my confidant Claire. Hi Claire. For this, just so I make sure I'm, within correct bounds. I'm not doing anything crazy. But in my own personal experience from my friends and mutuals who have had their own transition journey, they have said that a lot of their feelings about transitioning started with childhood and their relationship with their parents and just their childhood as a whole. So can you tell us a little bit about your childhood within your relation to your journey?
Yeah. Right off the bat, I grew up with a single mother. So that is a lot of, it strengthened our relationship, but it was also like, I could see how tough that was on her. So growing up, I was not a problematic child at all. I was like very well behaved and I was like top of my class, all that stuff. So I think there was an instance when I was younger where I repeatedly in my head, when I was envisioning myself in the future or thinking about myself in a scenario, I always pictured myself as like the protagonist of like those dystopian novels, which are usually just like guys, they're just boys. So that's how I pictured myself in my head. And I was like, I'm not going to connect that to anything though, because when I finally found out what transgender people were, I was like, that sounds really hard. I don't want to do that. So I put that on pause until I eventually like realized, oh, my college is really resourceful for this kind of stuff. So I think growing up, I just would repeatedly have like thoughts and be like, I guess I wouldn't want to be a girl, but no action at all and no conversation at all, because I did not talk to trans people.
Okay. What was your first experience like when you started to open new doors and I guess more opportunities with talking to more trans people and just getting more knowledge about a new, I guess, lifestyle?
I think it helped that we did have like a GSA in high school, and I only went to 2 meetings, and that's because my friend was in it, and I was like, I'll tag along. I remember my first meeting, I was like, I'm an ally, and that's why I'm here. And my first like dipping my toe into like queerness was just like freshman year. I online dated this girl, and so that in itself made me think, oh no, now I can't be straight and cisgender. That's awful. But as the years went by, I just like became more comfortable with not being straight, and I think that eventually helped me come to terms with exploring my gender, because there was, I think, growing representation in media and around me. Of course, I knew of some transgender students, but I just never pictured myself acting on anything. Yeah.
Okay. And then with the dystopian novels that you mentioned, or like movies, did you have one in particular that you like modeled after?
Yeah, I was a big Maze Runner fan. And when they made it into movies and they casted Dylan O'Brien, I was like, I have been in love with this man since Teen Wolf. Like, this is awesome.
Were you like, this is peak man, this is peak
exactly.
performance?
This is everything I want. I was like, I'm in love with him. And then as I grew older, I was like, man, I wish I could be him.
How do you feel about gender roles growing up?
I think growing up, I was in a Mexican household, it's like, if I had more family around growing up, I think it would have been worse for me, just because machismo is like very intertwined with Mexican culture. So it's like men have these certain roles and expectations. Like Mexican sons are babied so much and so badly. I didn't have a brother growing up, but I know that if I did, there might have been a weird dynamic where my mom might have expected more out of me as like a daughter than having a son. So I wasn't directly affected by those gender roles, but I was very aware of them going on around me. And even growing up, I remember just like I only talked to girls because I don't know, it just felt like the right thing to do. And when girls did talk to boys, they would be like shamed for it. So there was just weird gender expectations about what spaces you could occupy and who you could talk to. And I was very passive with them. I just like followed right along until I was older.
Okay. Do you have any siblings?
No, only child.
Okay. Do you think your life would be so much more different, I guess, in your family dynamic if you did have an older brother, older sister, or any siblings?
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, I really wanted a sibling just because now I really appreciate my independence and I'm thankful for it. But I think growing up, I just had that inherent want for connection. And I had some of that with like one of my closest cousins growing up because we went to the same school and everything. But not having somebody my age at home to like talk things through or just like, you know, explore childhood with was kind of daunting, especially because I was also like an immigrant, so we didn't exactly live in a Mexican-filled neighborhood in Indiana, so it wasn't like I could go play with the neighborhood kids or anything.
Yeah. With societal expectations after your transition, did you feel like you have to live up to those expectations of looking a certain way?
Yeah, I think at the very, very beginning, I had this mindset of if I'm going to transition, I have to go all the way, and that means like I have to look like a guy and like start talking like a guy, start dressing like a guy. Like my first step that made me like realize I wanted to transition was getting a haircut. And last minute I decided, I'm gonna go on Pinterest and just look for boy haircuts. And so when I showed my barber or the person cutting my hair, he was like, we're going for a pixie cut. And I was like, yes, of course. That is definitely what I meant.
Yes.
It was a good haircut, but that also made me just think, I love being masculine, so I guess that means I have to be as masculine as possible. And it was only after I reached the point where I got top surgery that I felt so much like I felt free to explore gender just because I liked my body for a change. I liked my body so much, and I was like, I'm bored, because men's fashion does not provide you with a lot. You do not have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
So I started like accessorizing, started painting my nails, and that was like a baby step. And I was like, this does not feel awful to me because I have transitioned and gotten to this position where I can dress however I want and do whatever I want with my gender. So I think that was very liberating.
With what you had mentioned, that you feel like you need to look a certain way, act a certain way, sound a certain way, do you think that there ever is an end to transitioning?
I think transitioning and gender exploration in general is constantly ongoing and fluid. I know some people are very happy within the gender binary, but I have also talked to queer people before where we all agree, like, this is really working for me right now, and if it doesn't in the future, then I am open to changing, and I'm open to relabeling myself if I have to or want to, which I think is also just a part of maturing in life and being like, constant change is, it's gonna happen, and it's better to be accepting of yourself in that regard than to be really hard on yourself and try to force yourself to stay the exact same. I think that's limiting. Yeah.
Reflecting back on your childhood, what made you start thinking about your own gender expression?
I think it was mostly how other people grew up and started expressing their genders. So when you're in elementary, I don't think there's a lot of thought going on there because you're just kids.
Right.
But when you reach like high school, there's suddenly these roles that people feel where there's a girly girl and there's a sporty girl and there's like the soon-to-be frat guys,
Yeah.
And if you're not like overly masculine, then you're nerdy, and if you're not nerdy, then you're just gay, So I think there was just a lot going on with labels and roles during high school that made me think, I need to like be really girly because I'm a girl. So like junior year of high school, I went full out. I was also just having issues with like an eating disorder and weight, and so that really factored into like how I needed to be as feminine as possible, until I reached the point where I just got depressed because it's not healthy to overwork yourself to an idealized image of gender. And then it turned out upon reflection and upon COVID happening and me not having to be around people, not having to be labeled and perceived by others, that I was like, if I just sit alone in my room, what do I want to look like? Or what do I want to express?
When you were asking yourself those kind of questions, did you imagine yourself and kind of like, you remember those like really old Y2, well, I don't want to say really old, but because we're like as old as
retro.
It's vintage. But the like the web player games, like the Adobe Flash games,
yes.
of like the accessorizing.
Exactly.
Did you kind of picture yourself in that scene of like what exactly you could wear if you could paint your own perfect picture?
Yes, I honestly, when I was younger, I was on Movie Star Planet. Like that was my shit. And the funny thing is that I made like several girl characters, but I also made a guy character. And then I befriended this girl for a while as the guy character, and we like stayed friends after because like I got her like kick.
Yeah.
And then we were Instagram mutuals. So it's just really funny because even at a younger age, I was like, well, this is just customizing my character. So it's not real, guys. But then when I was having that reflection, I was like, it literally is like that in real life too. Because if I love myself so much and I view myself as the protagonist of my life, then I get to choose like how I accessorize and what do I look like and what makes me feel good.
With those thoughts, that train of thought, did you have a distinct moment where you realized that you didn't identify with your assigned sex?
Yeah, I think it was just I think in general I was very, very neutral to being a girl growing up. When people referred to me with she, her pronouns, or they in a pronounced way they talked about my gender, they were like, oh, she's a girl, blah blah blah. I felt a little bit of discomfort. I was like, I don't know why that's relevant, you know. For me, I just did not care enough about being a girl. That was not important to my identity growing up. And then when I tried to force it to be very important appearance wise, is when I felt like the lowest I've ever felt. So I think growing up it went from neutral to extremely negative, and then finally being liberated from that by being like, I can do whatever I want with this thing that is called gender.
And then now you said that you go by any pronouns, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you feel a certain type of discomfort if people refer to you by she, her now?
I think now not at all, just because when I was in high school I viewed it as this person only sees me as a girl or a woman, and then being around other queer people who used an array of pronouns and who like showed me in the long run like, hey, just because somebody uses this pronoun doesn't mean they're automatically a man or a woman, you know? They just play around with it and it just sounds nice. And it's like another form of gender fuckery that you can do. And I was like, that is really fun. So now that's why I use all pronouns, because I was like, I don't see pronouns as tied directly into my gender identity. I see them more as like, people are just talking about me.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Do you mind sharing a sentimental story that you've had exploring the queer community?
I think in general I've gone to like a lot of support groups or been like in a lot of conferences with queer people, and over I hear these stories of people expressing sentiments that I expressed like really early on in my transition, of like coming out to your parents and knowing that they have no idea what you're talking about. Like it's very alienating. And so I think a lot of it has just been gratitude for my circumstances and my journey, because I know my mom's one of my biggest supporters. But when I started, I immediately felt like this is going to be very hard because you do not know anything. She also just mostly speaks Spanish. So I was like, this is going to be tough. I have to translate and I have to educate and this and this. Yeah. But listening to other queer people's experiences with that has made me very eager to share like, hey, there is a good outcome. Like there is a good ending, so to say, even though it's ongoing. Because I feel like there's a lot of knowledge that I obtained along the way that people who are just starting to transition or just starting to think about their gender are immediately like scared of, you know. So I think it's been like heartwarming to listen to these people express their own worries, and then to be able to look at it from the other side of that journey and be like, hey, actually, not like the cheesy it gets better, but like hey, I went through that same stuff and guess what, I did figure it out. So you're just gonna keep figuring stuff out even though it's scary at first.
I imagine that's a very validating experience. To anyone who's starting their own journey of transitioning or a different gender expression than the norm, what advice would you give them?
I would say just talk to queer people, just like ingest queer media, just be like so hyper aware. Oh my god. Pause, guys. Sorry, we're calling in the army
The
real
feds.
quick. They're on to us.
Yes.
Yes, I would say explore as much as you can about other people who have your same identity or who have shared experiences, because for me that helped me feel like this is not weird. You know, I think a lot of times transgender identity is stigmatized as that's weird, or you have something wrong with you, or you need to seek professional help, which are all false things. So even just looking into like history and being like, queer people have been alive and have been out and have expressed transitioning for way longer than you think, and that's just because our schools don't teach about that. You don't get that knowledge unless you actively seek it out. So I'm a big advocate for transgender knowledge and just creating community and talking about it.
Oftentimes I have seen people, I guess for context, I was looking at our Barnes & Noble reviews.
Of course.
And as one does, as a girl does on a Sunday morning, I saw this one review that said that there was a children's book, who showed like gay couples and lesbian couples, and it was a mother, and she was saying that they shouldn't be teaching this kind of stuff, quote unquote, this kind of stuff to children at such a young age. I want to see what you feel about that kind of stuff in children's books.
Yeah, I think it's very relevant, especially right now because of all the libraries having to fight to include a lot of books for children and for people who are adolescents. I think that comes from a place of fear from parents of I don't know what this is, so I don't want my child to learn about it. So to parents, I would suggest educating themselves so that they can feel comfortable that their child is able to also learn about this thing that is not hurtful and it is not endangering. And there's a lot of fear-mongering going on politically where it's like, do not let your children be brainwashed by this propaganda. And then if you sit down and you just read a book about two people loving each other, it's kind of very obvious how absurd that is. So if parents were able to, I think, sit down and have their own exploration of what this kind of content is before stopping their children, I think there's a lack of connection there that can be filled.
With the mention of religion, I had an episode with Holly about religion a good couple weeks back. A lot of religions, as it is right now, are very openly homophobic, transphobic, all the mites. Do you practice any religion now?
I grew up Christian because my mother was Christian. Funnily enough, her whole family was Catholic, and she was the odd one out, and she said, I'm gonna go into Christianity. So I grew up having Jehovah's Witnesses come over for Bible studies, and I just liked being right about everything. I was like, this is really easy. These are easy questions because I just read that chapter. But definitely, as I've grown older, I've just become spiritual in the sense that I still pray regularly, but it's more of a gratitude type of situation, or I pray because it was a mechanism that my mom taught me growing up because I had a lot of anxiety. And she was like, if you feel scared or you're alone, you just need to pray and then it'll be okay. So I think that was kind of ingrained into me growing up, and I detest organized religion now just because I feel like any person who has that power to say what God is supposed to be saying is going to abuse it. Because that power is going to get to their head, and then they're just going to use it for their own tactics. So I'm very removed from organized religion, but I think I just view spirituality as a personal journey now, and how you detect your own moral values and how you see life and your existence in life.
So with praying, now when you practice it, do you view it as a religious practice, a religious, I guess, movement, or do you view it as something that's more easing to yourself and anxieties, or whatever you may be feeling? Yeah,
I think it's partially religious, just in the aspect that you are entrusting yourself to a higher being, right? You have to have that some form of belief in you, but I don't view it as solely religious either. I view it as it's very supportive mental health wise. It's very supportive in when you feel directionless in life, you feel I don't know why I'm here. I've gotten to that point before in my life, and for me, praying and taking gratitude in everything that's come into my life and continuously is positive has been really affirming. So I view it as like a bit religious, but most of it is just like a self-soothing and a kind of thing that I say it doesn't hurt. You know, it helps a lot actually. So as long as it's not harmful to myself, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's good. With your transition journey, you mentioned that your mom was your biggest supporter. Do you have any other notable supporters in your life?
Yeah, I would say any friends I have, automatically off the bat, they know that I'm transgender. My childhood friends, shout out Lily and Eva. Hey guys. They're not listening to this probably. But yes, I think the initial coming out to my like high school friends was just, I'm queer, you know? And they were immediately like supportive of it. They were like, oh, okay, no big deal. And so then coming out as transgender, I was just a little bit nervous, but I was also like, I grew up with these people and I know what they're like. And so entering college, I have been very sure and certain of approaching people, just because when I feel that they are accepting, I go for it. You know, there's a friendship already formed, there's a bond there. And off the bat, when I meet judgmental people, I don't feel anything for them, you know? Immediately I feel cut off and I'm just like, I'm not going to approach the situation.
Within that experience, have you ever experienced yourself having to cut someone off because they weren't welcoming of your identity?
I think I usually just don't let it get that far, but there are exceptions. My father, I had to cut off for other reasons, just, you know, general bad person. But I knew also that along with that, I would not be able to continue transitioning and telling him about it, because there was no world in which he would be knowledgeable on the subject. And just knowing that he already wasn't somebody I wanted in my life was like easy. But I would say I don't have experience with like developing a friendship with someone if I don't know off the bat that they would be supportive of me.
Sure. Do you hold any resentment towards him because of that?
I feel like early on I was very resentful, just because he did have another daughter and I saw him like abandoning his family like 2 times in a row, and I was like, you're on a roll, buddy. It was like just a feeling of embarrassment, right? Of like, I'm embarrassed that you are this way, and don't want to be associated with that. So I think in the moment there was anger there, but then as I continued to talk to my mom about it, we both were just like, we tend to just laugh things off. So we were like, that's really embarrassing for him. Like, I wish him the best in his life, but it's got nothing to do with me at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you think people started to view you differently after your transition?
I think definitely. I think going from, I wasn't necessarily girly, but not to brag, guys, but I had a very feminine body. And so I was used to being like ogled by men in a lot of situations. And when you transition and you like cut your hair off and you start binding and all this stuff, it's very blatant how people will treat you differently when they view you as a certain gender. I know with men, I discussed this with friends before, like they will not give you the time of day if they don't see you as like overtly feminine, or if you don't fit like the picture of what a pretty girl is, right? So I think in that aspect I noticed a lot of difference. And I think just in general, if you pose some kind of ambiguity in your gender, automatically people who are transphobic are just not going to treat you good. They're immediately going to like side-eye you. They're going to be like, if they don't outright question, hey, what are you? It's going to be in their tone. You know, they're going to address you, but you're going to know that they're talking down to you because they don't know what to do with you.
With that gender and ambiguity, do you think like a cis straight man would treat you on a more, I guess, disrespectful side of things because they can't figure you out? Or I guess anyone in general, have you experienced any type of disrespect just because someone can't, like, quote unquote figure you out?
Right. I think with cishet men, it's very like flip a coin, because either they have been educated and they have trans friends, or they have people in the queer community in their lives, or they have no exposure to that. So off the bat, they are like minutely scared of you. They're immediately like on guard, and they're like, I don't know what this person is. I don't know if they're trying to fuck me. Because I know that happens to gay guys, and they're just gay, you know? So I feel like any prejudice I've faced has been more confusion and nothing directly transphobic. Though I will say, the only hate crime I have been a part of has been road rage. Road rage is scary, and at the point I was dating somebody and he was driving. I don't know anything about driving, by the way. Passenger princess.
Yes,
me too. I was minding my business. But But this guy got mad and drove up next to like pulled up next to us and rolled his window down and started yelling. And he did say, "You two look like a couple of F-slurs."
Mm-hmm.
And I went, "I am. That's crazy." Because I don't know how to be serious. I think that's my defense mechanism. I was like, "That's crazy."
That's insane.
And that just made him more mad. And so my partner had to be like, "Niko, don't talk to him." So I have not been directly addressed since that instance.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's just because people are kind of cowards when it comes to that conversation.
Sure. With expressing yourself, do you view clothes as a form of gender expression?
Yes, definitely. I think it is so fun. And even if you're not transgender, it's just so fun to explore fashion and explore style growing up and even now. And I think clothing for me has been awesome in terms of gender fluidity and just like feeling like, oh my god, I love dressing masculine today, or I love going for a more feminine look today. And feeling that liberty of not tying it inherently to my gender identity or who I am as a person is also a very positive aspect. Because I think growing up, I felt uncomfortable dressing overly girly, but I also was not a tomboy. So I was very like catalog, like just pick something out that fits and then go for it. And then when you realize that you can customize every aspect of yourself, it's a really fun thing to do.
Did you ever question your own transition journey, like where you ended up? Did you ever question going back?
Yeah, I think at the very start, I was very scared to transition because I was like, if I regret this, there's no going back, guys. It's so permanent. And my mom also had that big worry when I first told her, like, I'm going to start transitioning. Because she was like, what if you want to have kids in the future? Which is already a conversation that I had before where I was like, no. But there was a lot of stuff and a lot of reminding throughout the entire journey, because I feel like there's a misconception that people can just say I'm transgender and start transitioning. But it goes like, I'm transgender, and so you do a lot of research. Like, it is so time consuming. And then when you finally get to a provider and talk to them, you have to get a referral, or you have to talk to a therapist, and you have to go through that. And then finally you can start transitioning. And even at that point, you have to check in regularly and be like, yeah, I'm still doing good. This is not affecting my health negatively. So I think I had that fear at the very beginning before transitioning. As I transitioned, I only experienced like a positive upward tick in my identity and how I felt about myself. And then post-op surgery, I felt like elated, it was like coming home to your own body. And at that point, I was able to just continue to play with gender as I wanted. Because I feel there's also the misconception of, if you start transitioning and then suddenly when you've reached your goal and you just start doing whatever, that you like were mistaken or you're detransitioning, which I don't think is fair, because I think, like I said before, it's a constant journey. So you're still changing constantly, and it's not necessarily going back. It's more like, I'm free enough to explore what I want to do now.
With your top surgery, I imagine that was really reaffirming. Did you do any other big changes to aid you along in your journey?
Yeah, I think hormone therapy was the big one. Like, once I took that step, everything else fell into place, just because I had such a great provider who was like instantly like, what's your goal here? Like, how much testosterone do you want to take, and how often? And she helped me along the way, even as I was like, I want to lower my dosage now, because I feel like I've gotten permanent changes that I wanted, and I'm good with that, and so then when I finally got top surgery confirmation that it was gonna happen, it didn't feel real to me. I was like, this is gonna happen a few months from now, but okay. I wasn't overly emotional about it, just because I felt like this should have been me from the start, guys. So it just felt like putting a puzzle piece into place. I was like, the problem is fixed, and now we can move on and do everything else that I wanted to do, but I didn't feel comfortable doing before.
Do you think that if you could do it all over again, if you could start from the beginning again in your journey, is there anything you would change?
I always reflect and I think, wow, it would have been cool to know this when I was younger. But at the same time, maybe not, just because of where I grew up. It was Indiana, so I knew of trans kids there, but I also knew that they weren't treated the best. So there are times where I'm like, I wish I had known this sooner, but also I think of the strain it could have had on me growing up. So I'm very happy with the way things unfolded, because it was a very positive experience overall.
With your experience on HRT, how did that go for you? Was it a good experience? How was your provider like? If you just want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I was very nervous. So I'm nervous for any changes I make in my life. So I research a lot. And on their website, they had like you need confirmation from like a therapist to start taking HRT. And so I had to go on a wait list for 2 months. And then when I got to the point of our appointment, she was like, oh, that's outdated. You actually don't have to talk to me. You could have just gone, you could have just gone to a provider and talked to her directly. And I was like, oh, I wish I knew that 2 months ago. That would have been nice. So I think that was the only like oopsie that I faced, because once I started talking to a provider, she was like on board. She had worked with a lot of transgender patients at that point, so she was ready to go. She just asked me the questions she needed, and we just, hit the ground running. And I think I'm very lucky in that regard, because I know people who are transgender and have to wait like years to transition.
Sure.
And so the fact that it happens so fast and so easily for me, I'm very thankful for it.
When you have gotten on HRT, did you do it more for yourself or for societal pressure to fit in?
I think it was both aspects. I know going in, I had a lot of talks with my mom where she was like, okay, people are going to view you negatively, and you have to not want to do this because you want people to see you as a boy. Like, if you know you're a boy and this, and this, then you don't have to prove it to people. You don't have to look the part. And I really appreciate it, though in the moment I did view it like, I got very defensive just because I was scared of anything stopping my transition. And then as I continued to transition, I was like, that's correct. Because I was, in the beginning, very nervous. And so I would talk lower, or I would slow down my talk, because I was like, I'm gonna sound very gay because I have a deep voice and I talk fast and blah blah blah. But then as it went on, I got so comfortable just talking and just chilling out and just being like, I made these small changes to my appearance, and now when I would get like quote unquote misgendered, I just started to not care about it anymore, because I was like, I don't know you, right? So I don't know why I would care how you perceive me. So I think that was another aspect of why I did go off T after 2 years, because I was like, the permanent changes are there, like that's been done, and I know other trans men continue that process just because they want to be as masculine presenting as possible. But learning that I had my own agency in terms of identity, and I didn't have to like reflect a perfect vision of a guy to everybody around me, I was like, cool, I'm not gonna worry about that anymore.
Do you think you'll ever get back on hormone therapy?
I think maybe down the line, if I do feel like I'm becoming overly feminized, because I know there's features that can like soften, and you get your period back, which to me, I don't care. I really don't care what's going on down there, guys. That's none of my business.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's a possibility, but as for now, I'm just chilling.
And then what you had mentioned with the process of, getting confirmed for top surgery, getting confirmed for being on T or hormone therapy, do you wish that getting all those confirmations and just the process of it, do you wish it was easier, or how would you change it if you could?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I know being on the panel today, there was a lot of conversation on, I wish my provider viewed me like as a person, and like I wish my provider let me take hold of the reins, because at the end of the day, it's like the patient's gender journey. And so when you face providers who are like, I need to check off all the boxes to prove that you're a trans man or a trans woman, and then there's like non-binary people who don't fit into that and who say, actually, I don't want to go that far, I'm just gonna get to HRT and stop there, because that's what will make me happy. I wish that was an easier conversation to have. I wish it was like put on the table from the start. Like, tell me how much you want to transition, instead of like, let's do hormones, let's do surgery. What surgeries do you want? How much of a man do you want to be, right? Because it's a very binary view of gender, which I think should be reworked in the profession. In that profession,
do you think that view of it just being like a binary transition from like male to female or female to male, do you think that view on being binary would change if there was more queer people in that type of field?
Yes, I definitely think having a more diverse body of professionals is like essential to the whole system, because a person can be an ally as much as they want to be, but there's some people who, having gone through processes themselves or having had those life experiences, are just, you jump a lot in the conversation because you already have an understanding there, and there's a sense of trust, because talking to like a queer person is different from talking to like a cishet person who is trying their best to understand.
Sure.
So if you're gonna be making changes about your body and somebody has made those changes, you like light up inside. You're like, oh my god, you know, like we have something in common. I think that's a very human thing too.
Sure.
And in general, just seeing queer professionals, I think, is very inspirational to younger generations who are like, I want to do something with my life, but I'm queer.
Do you think that that's always been a road stop for you in whatever career you want to take?
I think because I wasn't reflecting on it growing up, I was very much approaching my entire future as like, what is being a woman? And what am I going to do professionally as a woman? And it was very draining just because, you know, the patriarchy. Thanks. But then when I finally came out, I was like, I'm not going to have these opportunities. And I had already like gotten to the point where I was trying to convince myself it was okay. I was like, it's okay. I'm not going to be able to be very open about being transgender, and I'll have to try my hardest to look like a cisgender man. And then when I reached the point where I was like, I don't have to do that, I became a lot more comfortable with purposely taking up space as a queer person.
Sure.
Like purposely addressing that I am transgender, and being, you know, annoying about it, being like in your face about it, because I was like, other people are too scared to do this, so I'm gonna do it for them.
Yeah, that's really nice that you are an advocate in that region. Do you wish other people would advocate more about their expression?
I think it's a very personal like decision.
Sure.
I completely understand if people don't have the support system for that, and they, because of the fear for their own safety, they do not talk about it. I respect that. I do think within the community there is a need for representation from minorities, so I wish there was more space for people who choose to represent themselves, because I know there's a lot of issues with when you go into this queer space and you're not white. There are a lot of white queer people who will automatically take the stage, you know, because they grew up with a certain privilege where it's always been like, here's me represented, and so I'm going to talk the entire time. And I wish there was more space for queer minorities who were like, I have been told to shut up my entire life because I was born a woman, or because I'm not white, or because of this. If there was more representation there, in general, I think that would be cool.
I think that is about time. Is there any last things you want to say?
I want to say I'm such a huge fan of this podcast.
Oh my
I think
God.
it is so lovely. I'm so honored to be on the podcast.
Of course.
And to spread the transsexual agenda.
You're always welcome back.
Of course.
So we can talk again for sure if anyone wants to see Niko return.
Yeah.
I know I do.
I got fans.
Is there any last advice you want to give to anyone who may be going through what you had went through or will be going through?
Yeah, I say, if you have to be annoying about it, be annoying. Like, be so loud about it, because there's people politically, academic, like in all structures and systems, trying to silence you and trying to suppress that reality of transgender people existing. So exist, like baseline, just exist.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in today. That is the Strength Theory podcast. I was here with Niko, and my name is Rosalie, and good night, viewers.